This is
Positively Hygiene
with your host, Amber Lovatos,
Amy Prenti,
and Angela Doe.
Listen on as we dive into the positive of dental hygiene.
I think it's always good to check in with your friends because you never know what they're going through. Amber, I saw recently you've been posting in your stories about maybe your mental health and having a tough time lately.
Yeah. Actually, yesterday I did a private story and was like, oh my gosh, I actually feel good today. But lately it's been tough for me. I think part of it's just going things through life and seasons of your life. I mean, career-wise, my career is amazing. It's so great. I'm so blessed. Fertility stuff is hard. We've now had our, fourth canceled, frozen embryo transfer, canceled or delayed. And I feel more vulnerable to the impacts of the medication. And so the medication doesn't make me feel very good. And then just the struggle of wanting something so bad and then it not happening. And then coming up, I was pregnant this time last year and I thought that I would be pregnant again by this time. And I'm not. It has been very hard for me lately. So yeah, but I had a panic attack kind of recently and I hadn't had a panic attack in a while.
Good.
And so I've been taking we just recorded an episode where I said I'm not even speaking that much. A lot of it's because of what I'm going through emotionally. And sometimes when I don't post online, it's because I don't feel happy enough to post online.
Yeah, it definitely, what we go through, different things we go through in life can impact our work, even though it's not clinical. And even if you go through clinical, you still have to perform there every day. So you just end up sucking it up. And I think eventually that can just snowball and continue to where we can end up in a complete breakdown or the big topic in the recent years, right? Burnout.
Yeah.
So Amber, I was motivated by you because there's times where, not comparing at all, but I'm not in a good mood either. But recently you work on your mental health. You work in improving and I know you've done some workouts recently and something, right? And that motivated me to work out and to do something else to, Amber can put in the effort and the work to get ahead of herself mentally. I can too.
Yeah, for sure. I laugh because I do these geriatric workout classes. They're I'm the youngest person in there, but
Oh, Amber, I think you have to tell the story.
Yeah, so we were doing this balancing thing, and this older lady, she's at least 20 plus years older than me, and she's wow, you have really good balance, or you're really good at this. And I'm in my mind, I'm I freaking hope so. I am it wasn't on purpose. I didn't know I've had this past to lifetime, lifetime for years, and I just don't go. Anyways, it just said Aurora dance class, and I was okay, cool. I'm not a dancer, but I can move. I mean, I'll just do the movements,
Zumba or
something. Whatever.
Yeah.
And I get in there, and it was all elderly, all elderly. Nobody younger than 55, I think, in that class besides me. And so I was it was kind of strange, but it was the best time. I felt zero judgment. I'm the fact that I'm out of shape. It didn't matter. Everybody was nice. And then I read the description. Apparently it is geared towards the older population, but they said anybody is welcome. So I will continue going to my geriatric workout classes. And it honestly helped me going to that class and it being easy than it being super hard and then being me not wanting to go back the next day and dreading it. But yeah, I know for my anxiety, I really need to do cardio. And so I jog. I was really proud of myself this last week when I went. I actually do meditations. Meditations really help me, and I really have a Peloton app for that, which I don't necessarily use my Peloton app very often, but I do love their meditations. And I pick ones depending on what I need, and I needed peace last week, and so it walks you through these meditations and things visualizing, peace, whatever peace looks like for you, and feeling that like go into your body, and then through your head. It like tells you how to like visualize it, and that really helps me be able to like feel the peace. So I did that while I was still in the gym, because I know that once I get home, like things get hectic and crazy. And so I was like, no, I'm gonna sit here like up against the wall in the gym in the open, and maybe people are gonna watch me, maybe not, and they're gonna think it's weird, but I'm like visibly doing my breathing exercises, and I felt very proud of myself to not give a care if somebody's watching me do my meditations, because I knew that's what I needed to like make sure that I'm okay. That I'm okay to do whatever it is that I need to do in my life. But meditation really helps me. Journaling helps me too. I've done therapy on and off for majority of my life. If anybody's interested in therapy, even if you like don't feel like you can go to an in-person one, there's like digital ones that you can do on like HIPAA compliant apps. Like I did Talkspace for a long time, which I liked. But there are other ones that you can do, and you pay like different subscriptions where you just feel like sometimes you just need to let your emotions out and you don't want to bother people. Sometimes I feel like I'm being negative, but I also don't want to be dishonest. And my friend Elizabeth texted me the other day, and she asked me like, hey, how are you doing emotionally? And I didn't want to be honest and tell her again, like, I still feel horrible. And so I just ignored her. It doesn't mean that I don't need somebody to share those things with. And so sometimes feeling like, okay, I paid this person to listen to me helps take that guilt away of feeling like I'm bothering somebody. Because a lot of times I do like keep it in internally, and I know that it still like comes out. I know people can tell that I'm like not in the best mood. Like you can tell that I'm like quiet, and that's typically like not my personality, is because I'm so in my head. It doesn't mean that I don't need to get those things out. And so therapy has helped me. I actually took a medication recently for man, when I was having the panic attack. I didn't have medication on me. I have been prescribed, and I believe that there is no shame in the medicine game. Like if you need medication, that's why like medication was invented. And so I have had to take things for panic attacks before, like Valium and clozapam. I don't like Xanax. I think Xanax is like too strong for me. And Valium I didn't like. I was on Valium for many years, just for like when I needed like PRN for panic attacks, not like daily or even monthly. And a lot of times just having the prescription, having the medication made me feel like, okay, I have an out. I have something that's going to help me feel better, and I don't have to feel miserable. And sometimes it's just the fear of a panic attack, because if you've ever had one, for me at least, it feels very physical. My heart starts to race. My blood pressure increases. I have this fear of like I'm going to die. It's just a very, I feel like hot and sweaty. It's very physical. And so what the medication does for me is it lowers the feeling of the physical panic and helps me then be able to rationalize through my emotions. And so sometimes just having the medication there will like help me be able to do that. But because I haven't needed to take or haven't had a panic attack in a while, I was actually at my friend's ranch. We were doing like a girls' weekend, and I had a panic attack by myself in the middle of the night. It was not good. I was very close to like spiraling. It was not good for me. But yeah, so I took some medication kind of recently, and I try to avoid taking it. But clozapam is like the newer one that my doctor had prescribed me, because it's similar to Valium, but you don't feel as much like withdrawal effects at the next day. Not withdrawal effects, but side effects the next day. Usually, if I take Valium, I still feel like I feel a little down the next day. I don't feel that way necessarily with clozapam. And so I don't know. Talk to your doctors, and if that's something that you need, that's something that you need. My son is currently on an SSRI for his anxiety, and I do think that like it helps him, and sometimes that's what's needed. Yeah, those are kind of the things that I do. It's a lifelong thing, something that I like I've been suffering from this since I was 9. So I go through seasons of my life where things are so great, and then seasons where they're not so great. And sometimes there's a reason, and sometimes there's not a reason.
Yeah, with social media, like we put ourselves out there so much
Yeah.
that it's only one side of our story, right? It's not who we are all the time. So when someone does like, it's not on social as much, then it's sort of like, oh, are they okay? Is everything all right? If you're not posting as much or doing a story or something's going on. So that I think that can be tough sometimes, knowing that people see you, but then that's also a good thing because that means like
Yeah.
they're, following you and they want to know what's going on and make sure you're okay. I know, Amber, you like made fun, you're not a morning person.
I am not a morning person.
And not that like I am a morning person, but after having kids, like I have to be a morning person because for me to take care of myself, I have to get up early.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, when the kids are awake and everybody is up, it's just go, go, go. It's not about me. It's about taking care of the kids. It's about making sure my dog's okay. He's been sick, or things are good. My husband are taking care of the house or anything like that. So I have to get up early to get myself together, and this is how why I started going a bit downhill because I wasn't organized. I would get up when my kids get up, and then you're just on the go, right? Yeah. No time to stop, think, or prepare. And so not that I'm like a super organized person, but it just helps me figure out my day. Because if I have a big to-do list, even though I may have like 2 weeks to get it done, if I have that to-do list, I want to get it done now. And that's not healthy. And then I start feeling overwhelmed. So what I do every morning is I'll get up. Going back to it, I was really good at this before, but I started getting out of routine. Especially after the conferences, actually, is when I got out of routine. I'll get up about like 5 o'clock. So that gives me like a good 2.5 hours. And then I'll write down a list of what I need to do that day and a list of what I need to do that week. And on the list, I'm very practical with myself. I don't want to put down like 10 things, but no, I'm only really going to achieve 5 time-wise, because then even though that happens, then I disappoint myself. And again, I'm going back into a spiral of being overwhelmed. So I have to do that, delineate that. But that time by myself where I'm not thinking about anybody else, not having any distractions, because even though my kids can do independent play, they'll still come in every 30 minutes, every hour, mom, something. And if I'm having I want to be focused on my thing. If I'm doing one thing, I want to stick to it. That's what ended up being challenging I was also like the acting office manager or clinical operations manager at my old practice, because I would also do clinical hygiene, because I would be the only hygienist that day, but I'll also have to do all the paperwork stuff too. Numbers, payroll, putting in checks. And so when I had to start and stop one thing, I felt that took me longer than maybe I had a day just to work on hygiene, a day just to work on the paperwork. But that starting and stopping, that interruption really gets to me. And so that's why for me to get stuff done, for my mental health to know I'm there for me, I have to wake up early. And that is my time alone.
What do you do, Amy, to help with stress?
I will say, similarly, I do believe a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of mental health stems from a loss of control. I think if you're going on, whether it be a loss of control of time or a loss of control of emotions or just things that are out of your hand, just that loss of control, even dental anxiety from patients, a lot of times it's the feeling of losing control and not, I do believe there's a strong hand of that. I love yoga, and I am by no means a yogi, but what I love about yoga classes, I don't really enjoy it digitally because I like to be in the environment, because any class I've ever gone to, they'll say, if at any point you do not feel you can do a pose, you can challenge yourself and do what you can do, or do what you feel your body needs in that moment. Maybe you want to do a downward dog. Pose. Maybe you want to do child's pose. Whatever you feel your body needs in that moment, you take that time to do what you need. And I love that. And I feel like it applies outside of yoga as well. You need to pay attention to what you need And maybe you do need to find time to schedule. Like, I know right now I'm overworking myself. I get it. It is a work in progress. I'm still doing 6 days clinical. We have some goals we're trying to meet. So I think sometimes I push myself too hard, but I think a lot of it is taking ownership for what you have on your plate and then stepping back to see how can I allocate what I need to achieve this, That's kind of where I'm at right now. I do know I need to cut back on clinical days because I think sometimes I'm running on fumes to try to tackle, and I want to be a part, and I just wish I had more of me, but that's not a thing. It's not going to happen. So I know even opposite, I had recently clinically at work, and I think this might help if anyone is getting overwhelmed at work. Maybe you're falling behind on schedule and you start to sense a sense of anxiety. I recently saw our psychologist on an Instagram reel, and she said if you're ever feeling overwhelmed, she said a grounding technique that you can always do no matter where you are is you take an object. She took a highlighter and she took an object and she put it in front of her and she focused on it, and then she focused on the wall, and then she focused back on the highlighter in front of her face and then back on the wall. And she says that helps to ground you.
I saw that. I tried
You
doing
did?
it. I tried doing it and I couldn't do it. But I do this other technique where you do like, what is something you see?
Oh, yes.
What is
The
something
senses.
you smell? Yeah.
Yes.
What is something like you feel like physically? And that helps like ground you, like maybe get you out of like that space. Yeah. Yeah. And so like I agree with like the yoga thing, like having to go into class. That's why am I in shape? No, but I enjoy going to the gym because it gets me out of my house.
Yes.
Like if I can get myself out of the house, and then I feel like I like bright spaces. I don't like dark spaces because like then I don't know, it makes me feel like gloomier.
The saying that always gets me too is that people will say, you'll never regret a workout.
Oh, yeah.
You never leave the gym. You're like, oh man, I wish I didn't work out today. You say like, I really don't want
I
to
guess
go.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you'll never regret.
That's true. I was like, that's
No.
true.
Workout.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I regret it while I'm there.
Of course.
I'm dying.
I mean, you're right about the gloomy. I mean, they say like, Seattle, it's always sort of rainy. They say people are a little sadder there because of your environment. And I know for people with operatories with like no windows, I don't know how they do it. That definitely like can impact your day too. Definitely some sunshine, some vitamin D or bright light.
Also, like a tip I would give people is don't, if somebody's sharing with you about their mental health or whatever, don't place like unless they're asking you for a reason, don't tell them like why you think that they're going through what they're going through. And so I have a lot of people who online would be like, thank you for sharing about your fertility stuff, or about your mental health stuff. And then I'll have people who are like, well, I think that you're going through infertility because you work too much and that's probably causing you stress and causing you like, nobody asked you. And if you're trying to help, your comments are not helping. I feel like sometimes people just need to be heard, right? And they may just need to share. And so just be willing to listen and maybe ask like, would you like some advice or would you not? And if not, then that's okay, right? Meeting people like where they are, because they may not be in a space to like hear those things. And the one about the person who messaged me and told me like basically I work too much, I felt like they were judging me. Like they were essentially saying that I care more about work than I would a future child. And the reality is, guys, that I don't work as much as many of you do. I work on the weekends. I post on social media, but I don't pressure myself to even post daily. I don't. I have things that I'm working on, like I'm editing a book, but it's not like I'm daily in the clinic. I actually haven't been in the clinic for like a month now, I think. And I'm not going to go back this month either. I've taken off 2 months this year from work to go through fertility stuff. And so you may not know it, but I take a lot of time off from work. And I'm trust that I'm doing what I need to do. I'm saying no to speaking gigs, but like I shouldn't feel like I need to explain myself to anybody, right? But sometimes your comments, make people feel like they're being judged. And so sometimes just all they need to be, just listen, just hear them out. I would say treat people with grace. Sometimes people are acting out and maybe not because of you. It may not be because of the situation. One of the things that frustrates me a lot is when dental professionals get upset because their patient isn't flossing or their patient isn't taking the recommendation that they gave them. This has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with you. If I've had patients who just tell me like they know that they need to brush, they need to take care of their mouth, they just can't get themselves to do it. It may be like a motivational thing. It might be a sensory thing. It might be a financial thing. It may be like they're busy taking care of the kids and their parents and all the things, and they just don't have the time to take care of themselves. And then they come into you, and then you also judge them, right? I might be a lack of understanding and knowledge. So I don't know, give people some grace. I saw a story recently of a professional who posted a picture of her patient's teeth and mouth, and it was bad. It was pretty bad. She's like, and this patient declined SRP and only wants whitening. I get the frustration.
There's a lot of that. I've seen that same.
But it's not about you. It is not a personal attack on you. That patient deciding that, the patient didn't want whitening. That wasn't what it was. The patient just wants the like regular cleaning is what they were saying, right? The normal cleaning. That's a lack of a patient understanding. It is not like that patient came in and decided, you know what, I hate this dental hygienist so much that I'm going to do whatever they say. I'm going to do the opposite of what they say. Yeah. It is not about us, I think.
It could be financial. It could
be financial. It could be fear. It could be, like.
Maybe they had a bad experience once, and they're not going to reveal everything to you because you're like, well, sometimes I ask them so I can troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. But
I've talked to a lot of patients that always assume a deep cleaning is like a flap surgery. And they'll even coming in for it, they'll be like how many sutures will I need to get? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. No, like 0. But then I'll have to explain it, and then they'll be like, oh my gosh.
Fear of needles. Fear of needles is a huge thing, but fear of control.
Huge.
Trigger warning. We won't talk a whole lot about trauma and abuse, but survivors and victims of abuse, people who are going through abuse, will sometimes have a hard time with being laid down, with things being put in their mouth, with feeling like they can't breathe, like feeling like they're going to drown, like they can't swallow. I mean, there's a million reasons why a patient might be apprehensive to care. I can guarantee the majority of them are not about you.
You need to remember being in a dental chair is not only emotionally vulnerable, but physically vulnerable as well. You're laying down, the person sitting over you. That's an extremely vulnerable.
Again, back to that control thing, right? The patient doesn't feel in control. So giving people grace, if a patient wants to take a break, the patient can take a break. Right. If they want to hold the suction, they can hold the suction. I mean, I work with a lot of survivors of abuse, and so maybe it's a different setting, but still just giving people grace and understanding, and the grace that you hope people would give you. My TikTok right now has been a lot of talking about Snow White. So the new animation Snow White and the actress in Snow White, and the new actress has been coming out saying like these interviews about how like this Snow White isn't your Prince Charming saving you, and just talking a little bit negatively about the movie. And so people are really hating on her for these things that she's saying. And on the other side of that, I'm trying to think like, I can't imagine being 17 years old and having said some things so publicly and now being shamed by people all over the internet. Even if I messed up, even if I was wrong for the things that I said, I can't imagine how isolating she must feel in this moment. So I'm going to choose to give her some grace, right? And scroll on. There was and her PR team put out a video, like a positive spin on her thing, and people were like, "Oh, her PR team working hard." And I was like, you know what? I'm going to like it. I'm going to like it. I know like my one like may be invisible to her, and I just don't want to judge her because I don't know the full situation. And I would hope that the grace, I also need to learn to give myself that same grace. I remind myself. And so for me, it makes me feel better if I'm giving others grace, that hopefully I can give myself that same grace, or that other people would give me that grace, because I'm definitely am not perfect, where none of us are perfect, right? And we all have our moments, and hope that people would treat us the same way that we would treat them. Or
yeah, I'm glad you talked about that. I want to say like 3 tips I have, and just managing as a dental hygienist in different aspects of our lives. Clinical, Amy, you brought up about that focus thing. I would say like taking micro breaks. I know like Stephanie Bott, she talks about this on her Instagram, but I started taking more and more of those micro breaks, especially in pedo. You just go from one chair to another, and it can be fast and furious, especially in the summer. So me taking a break moment just to stretch is just like a breath I need to take to re-energize, refocus on what I'm doing, why I'm there, and just like a moment in the rush for me, you know. Another thing is books. Amber, you've talked about this before. It's a millionaire book.
Yeah,
I forgot the name of it.
I love that book. It's called We Should All Be Millionaires.
We Should All Be Millionaires.
We should all read it.
I was gonna say, how do you?
When I'm needing to be motivated to like girl boss it up. Not saying that we all need to be girl bosses, because it's okay to just like be chill. That's a great book. They say that those people who obsess over the same things have anxiety problems. Currently, I am listening to Harry Potter, like the entire series again, and it makes me feel better. It like I do only watch Harry Potter on repeat or Gilmore Girls on repeat.
Yes, since it's gonna be the fall,
It's
I put on Gilmore Girls when I work.
And so sometimes those, and not everything needs to be serious, but that book makes me like. Motivates me to be like, yeah, I can do that. Positive self-talk. Sometimes I talk to myself out loud and I'm like, you got this. Like, you're a badass. Look at how far, like sometimes reflecting on how far my life has come. I was talking to my good friend Shauna this weekend and about my career and how, like, I kind of imagined this for myself at 17, teen mom, suffering from mental health issues and being in an abusive marriage, to now have been in Time Magazine, to be a spokesperson for Crescent Oral B, to be like multi-award winning, married to a doctor, like, I don't know, like
being friends with Angela and Amy.
I mean, let's not brag. That's a big one there. Take it back.
Like, man, I have such a good life. Honestly, I have such a great life, and like reflecting on those blessings, I think that's important too. My sister always says, like, the sun will rise again tomorrow. And so sometimes that helps me to remember, like, I'm not always sad. I have had moments in my life where I'm so happy and so blessed, and trying focusing on that. Sometimes it's easier said than done. I can't always get there. But allowing ourselves breaks in life, sometimes it just don't work. I have responsibilities to do, and I don't, because I can't. And I just want to sleep. And that's okay too.
Maybe sometimes what you need to, I know when I had started working 6 days clinical, it was because we were saving to do a new build on our home, so we wanted to have as much money in the bank as possible so that, we weren't limited for what we wanted. And I just had a timeline. You can't always do that.
Yeah.
But if you can, for me, I could. It was helpful to be, okay, I want this in the bank at this time period. I want this in the bank at this time period. So I pushed myself to work as much as I could with these goals that I had and an end date, and then I did take I think about 2 months off from working Saturdays, but I had the reserves that I was able to do that.
Sometimes work is distracting too, though.
Yeah.
I sometimes enjoy like getting out of the house. It takes me over an hour to get to Amy's, but it's kind of nice to like, it's a different setting for me. So it's still nice. Like, I don't mind the drive. I do have to speed here since I'm always late, but, but I don't like, it is nice to like get me out of my house and get me out of the space and talk with friends.
Well, yeah, that's my last thing I was going to say is a tip that to talk with your friends or network. And that I think that's why we like conferences. And I think maybe that's why this last RDH Under One Roof conference was sold out, because people missed that bonding, or they were so burnt out that they needed something to rejuvenate. So, you can definitely call up your friends, even do a Zoom call or something, because they're the only other dental hygienists are going to be the only ones who understand what you're going through and that you're not just cleaning teeth.
Yeah,
I think too, one thing that I've been told all my life, not all my life, actually, more recently, I'd say the past 10 years, that I'm like unapologetically optimistic. Like, I live with like my positive blinders on, and I'm just like, this is great, And I think a lot of what made that change for me is I wasn't always that way. I was always I would get stressed if I couldn't control something. If something happened out of my control, I would say, oh, I would panic and I would kind of be like, oh man, like, well, then I can't do this or this is this. And what helped me is when something goes wrong, kind of take back, and it's a difference between putting blame on yourself or trying to take control of what you can. What could I have done differently to have tried to achieve a different outcome? Example is, it first was said to me when I was a district manager working in retail, or not a district, I'm sorry, I was working in retail as a manager, and my district manager came in. I had multiple associates call out. So I was like running a floor set, which is when you launch all new products on the floor. And I was running a floor set pretty much by myself. I think I had one employee with me, but you need about a team of 5. And they're all, teenage kids. So then no one shows up for like an overnight floor set. And he walks in, nothing is done. And I told him, well, half of it was done. It was we were kind of rushing and trying to get it all done. And then he's like, well, what happened? I'm like, well, what do you mean what happened? No one showed up. It's just me and so. We're trying to do the best we can. And he goes, okay, well, what you could have done, you could have stepped back and you could have said, I'm going to do this fixture, this, execute it at 100%. I know we left off here. Tomorrow we're going to pick up here and execute the rest. But instead, I was trying to get it all done with time I didn't have and resources I didn't have. So At that moment, I was focusing on what I couldn't control, which is people called in for their shift. No one came. But what I should have done is focus on what I could control, which is what can I achieve with what I have.
Yeah. I think that's a good strategy for like in the moment, not a good strategy in retrospect. Like, I don't think it's for me as somebody who's like hard on themselves to look back and be like, how could I have done this better? Because then I like hate myself a little bit. And I'm like, oh, like I hate myself for doing that or whatever. Versus giving myself like grace that like, okay, maybe that wasn't the right thing, but learning from that for the future. Like, I'm going to change it for the future and be better in the future or not make the same mistakes. For me, I think that's one of the, I don't know. It's hard for me to, one of the things that I look at back and when I'm thinking that way about myself or when I'm embarrassed because I like chronic overthinker, Angela and me, well, like sometimes somebody will say something and I'm like, or I'll do something and I'm like, oh my God, that person's going to think that I'm this certain way or think badly about me. Or I remember something from my past that I'm feel shameful about or embarrassed about. And I think like, oh my God, that person probably remembers that about me. I think about that person, whether that person be Angela. Angela, like 7 years ago, maybe I did something embarrassing. Is Angela thinking, how many times have I thought about Angela and embarrassing things that she has done? I don't. That's the truth, right? Like, I can't think of an embarrassing thing that either of you have done, or really most people in my life, because we're generally, I think, self-centered. We're thinking about ourselves and our mistakes. Nobody's really like keeping track of like all the things that you are doing. And so it helps me put it into perspective when it's like, I saw my cousins this weekend who were, it was a little triggering, but what I tried to think about was like, I haven't thought about them and the things that they have done in their lives. So hopefully they're not thinking about the things that I have done. I don't think people pay us as much attention as we think that they are paying us.
And also, too, if you are in an environment in an office, and I always forget this because we do not have any drama in our office right now at all. We haven't for years. But if you are, and I know it's not the case for a lot of dental professionals, I know there's a lot of drama in office out there. But if you are in a position where you don't feel like you can avoid it and you've brought it up to management and it's not changing, then maybe it's time to remove yourself, because even if the drama isn't involving you personally, if it's still affecting you in that negative way, then maybe it's best to walk away, because there are offices out there where everyone, and I could speak, myself, our office is great. There's not been one fight, argument, and I'm saying like a solid 2+ years. Yeah, it's really good. So like these places exist, and maybe you change your schedule and you avoid when a certain day if someone's there particularly, or maybe you change altogether and you go to work at a different office, different location. Maybe you temp so you can see what other offices are like around you, to just kind of give you insight to maybe what a team environment looks like. But certainly if you're spending multiple days in a location for 8 hours plus at a time, you shouldn't be involved in drama.
Well, Amber, thank you so much for your vulnerability during this episode. And if any of you listening are going through a tough time, we hope that some things we talked about and some tips we gave you will help. And thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Positively Hygiene.
Join us every Tuesday for a new episode.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for the opportunity for how you can contribute to our podcast.
And follow and review Positively Hygiene on Apple and Spotify podcast.